Okay, we're live. So,
Hi, David.
hi. How's it going, Carl?
Welcome to Zooming In.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, I'm not in my zooming in room, and I am currently just going to go over to the live dashboard and see if we actually are live um, on YouTube. And it looks like I'm live. Yep, we're 16 seconds into our live video. Is it possible?
Oh, that's great. How could our fan base follow along?
Unclear, Carl. It's very unclear. But I'm going to find a link and give it to our one fan that is at least going to be quality control for this particular time.
Okay.
Which I hope
there's also some
because
backup quality control available in the Queen Studio.
Nice. Yeah. Whew. Sorry, my computer's not happy about me running these things that are doing this stuff, so I'm not. We're just gonna have to wait until YouTube says it's happy with me.
Okay. Do you want to talk content while we're waiting for the tech to work?
Oh yeah, sorry, I got stuck in tech and I didn't do any content. Did you do any content?
No, that's okay. I just mean I think we said 3 each, 5 minutes. We're calling it Zooming In. We're doing predictions.
Yep.
Is one of us hosting this episode?
Sure. Why don't you host this episode in case I'm doing the
tech stuff?
The tech stuff, in case I have any control over the tech stuff. My sense is that I can actually show the different windows that we're capturing, and so that I can add in windows and take away windows. So this may be something that we could bring in, like a Google search or something like that.
Okay.
But
very
only
cool.
mine, which is the best,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That's what I would choose.
And so I'm currently looking on YouTube to try to find okay, wow, it looks like it's live. Let's see. Everyone can see this video. Great. I'm going to just figure out if I'm just going to get the link here if I can. Get a shareable link. Okay. I'll do it to you in Skype. I don't know. Oh wait, where are we in Skype? Hi, Carl.
Can you send it directly to my quality control associate?
Yes, I can. I want to know if there's any audio. That's the big thing for me. Also, whether it's super weird that I've set up the windows like this since there's all this black space in there.
Can you make an incognito window and just look at it there?
What do you mean?
Are you in Chrome?
I am.
Have you ever made an incognito window?
Why would I do something like that, Carl? I want everyone to know my
search
history at all times.
To test out your YouTube live links that you're always making.
Hang on.
Because then I think you wouldn't be logged in and you'd be seeing it as someone else would see it.
I think that's true. But the audio, we're talking the audio, so it'd be kind of
true. That's a good point. I mean, yeah, you'd have to that would be confusing. It would need to be a different machine probably to really know.
Okay, I'm sending a link to our live podcast to you and Lydia.
That's the alias we use for my associate.
Excellent. And it looks to me like it's frozen on the OBS screen, but maybe it's not on YouTube Live.
Okay.
And this is more of a
since we're doing all the tech, let's actually just do 2 each, just to not overload content while we're also figuring out the tech. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. And did you say you wanted to relocate?
No, it's okay. If we don't need real audio, then it should be okay.
I mean, you sound pretty clear to me.
Oh, thanks.
I'm gonna grab a lubricant for my voice.
All right, good.
See if I can do this without getting up.
All right, you might have to go to
no, I can't.
incognito mode before you do this. Okay, bye, Carl. I like that your fridge manages to be in the shot.
It is frozen. The video is frozen. I'm getting reports. currently from our audience that the video is frozen.
Interesting. Can she hear?
Is there audio? Apparently we're funny. We should probably tag this comedy.
So that must mean there's audio, or there may not be audio. I'm not sure.
This might be, I mean, on a percentage basis, this is one of the funniest things ever produced. Is there audio? It sounds like yes.
Okay,
sounds
good.
like yes. All right. So this is a podcast with the the frozen image is our logo.
Okay.
This is a podcast.
Great.
Shall we do this?
Sure. I didn't think of any content, but that's okay.
Well, do you want me to filibuster for a bit?
Sure. Well, I guess the question I have for you is, do you, if it were frozen or just like I'm looking at it now, it looks like we move maybe one frame every 3 or 4 seconds. Is that?
Let's just move a lot, so there's a lot of action.
Is that a useful thing for us to be doing?
Okay, I have an idea.
Yes.
There's probably better ways to do this in the future, but what if we this time just turned off our video, so at least if it's like really unpleasant to look at least it's a dark screen?
I think we should leave the video on for sure.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's just do it.
Okay, I'm getting a thumbs down. We're getting live feedback from our audience here
about your content that you're creating currently.
About the idea of keeping the video on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, what if I just held up like a picture in front of me? Well, you're not going to see it for another few minutes, but where it was like blocked off.
Oh, that's clever. Yeah, we could just hold things up to the camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay.
Great.
This is a book by a friend of mine that I've been reading.
Oh, nice. Visual storytelling. I like that.
Yeah. You know the author, David. You know the author.
Oh yeah, Richie. Wait, Richie made a book?
Yeah.
Congrats,
years
Richie.
ago.
Ah, very nice. That's great.
I don't know how steadily I could hold it. There's probably a better way.
I'm also going to plug a book.
Oh, nice. Nice. I know that author.
Yeah.
Actually, if we're doing this, though, this is really the book I want to hold up.
Ooh, that may be the best book ever written.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, wait. I'm getting live shot of... Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. I think we've pretty much nailed this.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So you have gone dark, Carl, on the thing, I think.
Oh. Okay. That's cool.
And I have now too.
I have a face for radio.
All right. So now we're just big Skype logos.
So it's sponsored by Skype. They sponsor us with free audio visual.
Carl,
services.
our podcast is called Zooming In. This is working out perfectly.
We've zoomed in on the logo.
All right. Well, this is great. What do we got? How is the audio quality?
How is the audio quality? And how's the audio quality? The audio quality is fine.
Oh, interesting. Okay, great. That's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
As it were. Great. All right, Carl, we're doing sports today?
Yeah.
Great. Do you want to take us into it?
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah, oh, I'm ready.
All right. Hello and welcome to the first episode anyone but the people who have to will see and hear of Zooming In, a new show brought to you by me, Carl Bialik, and my co-host, who will now say his name.
Hi, I'm David Goldenberg.
alternate names for the show that we considered included Carl and David Show, Carl and David Podcast, and so on. We'll see how this goes. I'm very excited. The plan is David and I have been friends for 23 years and like talking to each other anyway, are now going to give people the option of joining us as we make completely far-fetched, very hypothetical, very speculative predictions, and then we back up those predictions and try to persuade each other of why we can see the future.
I think that's
David, today's theme for Zooming In is sports. And in fact, I'm holding up a sports book by our good friend Alex Tilney. So I think that's appropriate. And I think the book you're holding up is by your friend who also has played sports,
that's
like
right.
sports. So seems thematic. David, the way this is going to work is we're talking sports. You're going to make a prediction about sports. You can give an uncertainty range if you want, like, plus or minus 100 games, the Warriors will win 80 games next season, something like that. And then you'll explain why. I'll give my own prediction. We'll discuss. And on to the next prediction, which I'll kick off. We'll do it 4 times, 2 each. Let's try to stick to 5 minutes per prediction. In and out, zoom in on the sports world, zoom out, and back to the rest of our bizarre lives. Sound good?
That sounds lovely, Carl.
All right. You ready to start us off?
I am. My first prediction that I've been thinking a lot about this year is that in college football this year, there will be a complete season, but more than one major conference will not participate.
So that major conference won't play a single game?
Will not play a single game. One of the Big Five, at least.
And the Big Five, for all those like me who have sort of stopped following college football, is let me try.
Right.
Big SEC.
Correct. That's the big one.
Pac-12 now.
Mm-hmm.
Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
ACC.
Sure.
And then is it still called the Big 10?
Yep.
Is that the Big Five?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
We call them the Power Five, but yes.
Okay. And in terms of this season, how are we going to define the season, given that everything's up for grabs?
I was going to say the season will be the thing that starts sometime in the fall and ends sometime before the spring.
So starts by when does winter start? Starts by December 20th.
Yep.
Ends by March 20th.
Yep. Exactly.
And what would it count to have a season? Like if, everyone realizes that Alabama and Clemson are the 2 best teams, let's say, and it's unsafe to have too many games, just have those 2 teams play a championship game. Does that count as a season?
Well, for me, it would count as a season, Carl, but I think that for most people, a season would involve at least 6 games and some version of the college football playoff that we've got now, which has 4 teams in it.
I don't think we'll have a season at all.
Interesting.
And I have incredible uncertainty about that because I can think of like 10 things between now and then that would have enormous influence, all of which depend on each other. All right, we got a few minutes left after nailing down definitions, which is tricky these days because what is a season and so on. So why do you think we will have a season and that at least one conference won't participate?
I think we'll have a season because I read a lot of basically I think I read a lot of like recruiting stories and things like that go on in the Southeastern Conference, and I believe that there's very few things that could happen between now and the start of the season that would prevent these teams from playing at least conference games. And I think that there is so much money and pride at stake that they're very willing to put a lot of people at risk. Even if there's even if the situation deteriorates a lot in the South, which I expect it to by September. I still imagine that there will be football and that there may not be, fans, or at least fans in person. I will be here, so there will be a fan, hopefully. But I won't be there, and I don't know that there will be in-stadium fans, but I think that it will be hard for them to not have a season. Whereas I think that on the West Coast, which is where I currently live, I have a hard time seeing a way in which the Pac-12 would have a season. So for me, there's like an 80% chance that the SEC will have a season, and a 25 to 50% chance that the Pac-12 will have a season. And I think that that means to me that we will have a football season without some of the major players playing.
I think thinking about it more and hearing your case that I'm persuaded, because I keep thinking about all the things that could go wrong, but I think I'm not giving enough credit to how much can shift in what a season means. So, for instance, the SEC could figure out a way to do it where it's relatively safe. Maybe they take sprint football rules. Maybe it becomes the equivalent of rugby sevens. I think people will want the season to happen enough that they'll be willing to have a totally different system. And also, these teams are enormous. So even if some players don't want to play and some players shouldn't play, they'll find a way to have something that looks as close to football as we can get, and people will be willing to accept it.
Carl?
And in that case, it's a season.
I no longer want to talk about this. I just want to talk about what the football equivalent of rugby sevens would be, because that sounds amazing.
Okay.
No,
let's explain what rugby sevens is. So rugby is normally rugby 15s, but rugby sevens is basically the same size field, but with 7 on a side. So it's like super wide open, very fast paced, much less physical, and very high and fast scoring. So games are really short, still have high scores, and they couldn't be longer because people would just like drop from exhaustion because it's so much running.
And it's basically all skill position players.
And they play like a whole tournament in a weekend, right? What's up?
Yeah, and it's basically all skill position players and no props or locks or linemen, I guess. Yeah.
Who are quite skilled as well, so I resent that. That phrase,
skill player as the
enough.
definition, yes, but yes, you're right. There's certainly like, and I think that there have been some cases in rugby sevens where some of these props and locks have actually turned out to be amazing wings because it just turns out that it's really hard to tackle somebody who's like Jonah Lamu sized.
Right, it's not all about speed. That's true. Okay, so I guess it's my turn.
Yes.
And I predict that by year's end, we're going to have a top 50 tennis player in women's tennis play a match televised in some way against a man. I'll just stop there. And I give that, I don't know, I think there's like a 52% chance of that happening. Ooh. And I'll give my explanation after you give your prediction. Basically, it's a yes or no one. Or, let's do it a different way. What is the highest ranked woman who will play a televised match against a man this year? And
I think that there is. So I would say
it won't happen with any ranked woman.
I'm trying to think if Venus Williams is going to be in the top 50 during this year, because she's done it before. If I'm remembering
she was
correctly.
Let's say she was like number 70 or 80.
Yeah.
When this all suspended sport everywhere. Mm-hmm. So let's say that we can look it up.
I could see her doing that, and I also think that having watched, we talked about horse before between, WNBA players and NBA players, things like that. People are craving any sort of spectacle, and I think that if we don't have a real tour, which seems like we may not, given the troubles with travels and all sorts of other things, that this seems like a relatively safe way to have a relatively entertaining relatively entertaining sports. Although I'm not convinced that this would be a move forward for either the WTA or the ATP or anybody. But anyway, I would say that it would be good, but I don't think anyone in the top 50 will be. I think it will be Venus, and she'll be in the 70s or 80s.
Okay, so we'll say whatever Venus Williams' ranking is, in case I'm wrong, and it's like 48.
Yep. And
feel free to look it up. So my thinking is that, first of all, you gave your explanation before mine, which is a change up of format, and I like that. We're very experimental here.
Sorry.
But no, because then I get to respond to it. So lucky me. I think that right now people are desperate for any matchups. A, B, the matchups we can get are completely dependent on who is where and how close people are together, and two venues that can have them play and have it be televised. And as a result, people are already thinking beyond the usual sort of artificial boundaries and silos in terms of age and ranking and everything else. There was just a sort of exhibition in Germany where very young players who had never really played against pros were there because they were nearby and they had a good enough. You just have to dig deeper. And so I think that's one reason why, hey, if there's a top 50 women's player and, the next choice is like an unranked men's player, let's get her in there. Like, that has appeal. She very well do better. She has name recognition, and I think she'd be glad to have the chance. Of course, you could still have women's only events, but if you can double the number of available players by looking beyond whether they're men or women, and also if you're doing the same thing anyway by age and other things, it just makes sense. We also have in tennis now universal tennis rating, which also ignores all the sort of artificial boundaries, and it's just who do you beat, and then it's sort of you get a ranking based on overall results. So you can actually figure out who the available pool is, whether they're men or women, whether they're 15 or 50. And then there's also been talk about an ATP WTA merger, and men and women's players are talking more, doing more together. I'm sure training more if they're near each other. So I think eventually it'll just seem like a logical thing, and I don't think it'll feel like a spectacle. I think it'll just be two players who are good enough to watch televised who happen to be near each other and want to play a match.
Are there any players in particular you think fit that?
Players who would be more inclined to do it?
Yeah. Or geographically set up for it, or whatever.
Well, I would love to see a map right now of where tennis players who are willing to be mapped are, even just roughly, because I think it's kind of fascinating. It's just a snapshot of where either they happen to be or where they chose to settle down, presumably near a place they could train for many of them. In the U.S., I think Southern California and Florida are the two places that come to mind where there's probably a lot of density. Mm-hmm. But in a way, when there's enough density, there might be enough men that they don't have to think outside the box. So you might need a place that's sort of intermediate on density. Then I would just think of like women who train a lot with men, who have men as hitting partners, because those could be the men they play against. Mm-hmm. They're already hitting against them all the time. Why not play a best of three and televise? It doesn't need to be against. I just said against a man, not against like a current active man.
Yep.
So there are many top former men's players or just well-known coaches who are probably close enough to those women. I think that would be the most sort of likely to happen. The most sort of high profile would be, I don't know, Gael Monfils is dating Elena Svitolina. I think they're both in the top 10. That would be incredible. Granted, he's like a foot taller, so probably they would need to find a way to make it close and entertaining. But I also didn't say it had to be traditional tennis rules. I mean, you could mix it up, right?
I mean, that's what's been most fascinating to me is, this is actually going to relate to my next question, but it is, I think, most of these competitions between men and women in tennis, in history at least, the Bobby Riggs sort of stuff, has always struck me as this sort of idea of, battle of the sexes, sort of, like trying to prove something. Whereas what we want is something that's super entertaining and interesting. I think that's a big enough difference now that we could try to figure out ways to make it interesting that doesn't necessarily involve trying to figure out, how bad does the man have to be before the woman can beat him, sort of thing,
I think no matter what you will have, it'll bring out the bad faith actors, it'll bring out all that shit, mm-hmm. But it doesn't inherently have to be that way, and there are plenty, like I said, there are plenty of men and women who hit and train together and enjoy it, and, I think that sort of talk runs no matter what, so why not just actually have a match and enjoy it? But I agree, I mean, I think you say the history of it, my understanding is it's really just the two Bobby Riggs matches that were like that. Yeah. But because those are the two most recent high-profile ones, that's what we all associate with. But I found archive articles from the tennis history books of back in the day, they would just regularly be top men and top women would play a set, and it would be entertaining, and they were friends, and they would be in the same social circles. Granted, a very white upper crust social circle, but it was just like a thing that happened, and it kind of got tainted by that. I think we are past time on this one, mm-hmm. And I think you are up with your next prediction.
Yes, so
Oh, wait, did I make a prediction? I'm going to say top 10.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I actually gave a ranking. Top 10.
And you think it is? I know we're supposed to move on, but you think it is actually going to be what's her name, Svitolina, or?
She's the most likely, but I think once one does it, maybe lots more will.
Sweet. Okay, so my question, my prediction for the next one, and remind me if format is wrong, but I give a prediction, and then you give a prediction, and then I give an explanation. Is that right?
Yeah. So no explanations until we've both given our predictions.
Okay. So I predict that.
Or let me put it this way: you can explain exactly what your prediction means, but no justification for why you gave it.
Okay. So I predict that track and field events are going to become a much more popular sport for people to watch than they ever have been, and so they are going to be the sport that gains the most from the fact that from the pandemic, I should say.
And gains the most among, how should we define it? Like
among
Olympic
viewership.
sports?
So the viewership of these particular sports will grow, percentage-wise more than anything else.
No, I don't think so. I think they will grow a lot. I don't think they'll grow more than anything else.
Okay. Do you have do I go first and then you tell me why?
Sure, or we can do it. It doesn't matter.
I will say that I watched this high jump competition that happened the other day, and it struck me, which was basically not high jumper, sorry, pole vaulters. 3 pole vaulters in different places in the world. Basically, instead of just trying to see how high they could jump, they said how many times could they jump a certain height in a certain amount of time, which is not something that really anybody does ever, and doesn't really make a ton of sense. But it was fascinating to watch, and it was really interesting to see. And obviously, and it was almost a different sport because, basically if you missed the bar, you had to go set it back up again and all these things. But it was really fun to watch, and it was something that you could watch these 3 competitors do in their own backyards. And it didn't really, it captured my interest in a way that watching regular pole vault never did. Not just because I think pole vault is kind of a boring field sport. It's either you make it or you don't. But because it was this idea that this is something that's transferable to lots of other track and field sports in a way that is not transferable to lots of other things, which is this is something that you can compete against someone else doing it if we do it for time as opposed for distance. And it struck me as something that if other sports don't come back to normal, this could become a real thing that people like gather around to watch.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. And I think one of the reasons I don't think it'll be the most is that because it's such a good idea, any sport where you don't actually all have to be in the same place, and it's just how we do it, mainly probably for entertainment, but also just to make sure that every pole is at the right spot or that everything is fair and, level playing field and all that. But you don't really have to. That I think there are going to be a lot of sports that figure that out. So you can have people in different pools at the same time, like swimming. You can have competitive eating in lots of different places. Horse is like the basketball version of that. So I think, so the sports that figure it out first or figure it out in a really smart way will benefit more, but that those aren't the only sports that can. And in fact, while golf actually works pretty well anyway with physical distancing, you also could play the same course at a different time and still, as long as the conditions are similar, you could have kind of a fair test. So, yeah, I think that we're going to see a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation. Some sports will lend themselves more to it. Sports that are full-on contact sports are going to suffer more for sure than ones that aren't. And I could even imagine track and field events where people are in the same place, but they're further separated. So, they're running with staggered times, or I guess on a lap that doesn't totally solve it, but you could still imagine ways that you could kind of keep people at a distance but still have it all in one place. I think biking sports are going to benefit a lot because cycling in general is in a really good spot, and I also just think generally sports is going to suffer a bit here, unfortunately, at least at first, just because whatever you do that is smart, it's still going to be hamstrung in a way that recorded entertainment just isn't. So recorded entertainment is going to gain, relatively speaking, and that's going to be tough. And sports is also very ad supported, and advertising is going to be tough too.
Yep. I agree with that. I do think that for some reason live sports are more interesting to me than I thought because I don't know what happened in the Premier League, 8 years ago, and I thought I would be very happy to just watch a season of something that happened that I didn't know that there would be drama there. But the fact that I wasn't sharing this experience with anyone else, and I should go back and say I tried to trick myself by doing this, and it just wasn't there for me. I stopped after the first few games. And I think that so this idea that people are, even if it's less actually entertaining, the idea that we could all experience it together makes it much more exciting for me. But you're absolutely right. Like I am, I am happy to watch the WNBA draft with a bunch of people in a way that I never would have done before, or watch horse or whatever. But it is, I don't know that is that's going to be enough to replace the fact that we're not going to have a bunch of that I know that there's 20 million other people watching an NFL game with me. I don't know if 20 million people watch it, but
yeah, and I mean if we're talking international too, that's a different. Like those sports already are starting from a stronger base and maybe have a better chance to gain even more.
Yeah.
All right, last prediction. My turn. The popularity of Ultimate Frisbee relative to other sports in the U.S. will double in the next 2 years. And I am very uncertain about that. Like, it could also go down.
I am thinking that there will be very little change in the popularity of Ultimate Frisbee because it suffers from some of the... Oh, well, I'll stop there. You go, explain why you think it will double, and then I'll tell you why it will definitely not.
I think throwing a Frisbee with someone else is an excellent physical distancing activity, and that a lot of people are going to figure that out, and maybe already are in their backyards. And once you do it more and get good at it and appreciate how beautiful the flight of it is and all the things you can do with the flight that you can pick up on from YouTube videos, which are plentiful. Mm-hmm. It's TM. People are going to just get relatively more into that. It's a non-contact sport already, so it can probably figure out a way to make even less contact part of the game by penalizing contact more. And there are lots of sort of offshoot games that people can play that involve being quite far apart, but still sort of competing and learning some of the basic skills that will then lend itself well to sort of evolving back into the full-on Ultimate when it's possible. Whereas I think football, which has a lot in common with Ultimate from a kind of rules and space perspective, whether or not it comes back at the highest levels in college and the NFL is going to be a really hard sell in high schools and below. And those kids and their parents are going to be looking for things for them to do. And Ultimate is going to take the opportunity maybe more than other sports.
So I buy some of your reasoning. And I think that if you had said to me Frisbee golf is going to, which is, I don't think anybody, what do we call it? Frolf, yeah, or Seinfeld. And I think that I have never played Frisbee golf since I was in high school until recently, and I've played, twice now in the last few months. And that is because I think it is one of those things where you can hang out with someone, you can be physically distanced from them. It's a fun thing to do. You wander around a little bit, and there is a beauty to the actual figuring out how to control this thing, which is, well, I haven't figured it out yet, but it is it's fun to throw it really hard anyways. And so I think that is going to increase in popularity. The problem with Frisbee for me is that, problem with Ultimate for me is that I don't want to be putting my hands on the same thing that someone else has been putting their hands on.
Gloves, David.
What's that?
Gloves.
It could work. I still am just touching myself all the time with my hands, gloves or not. So, but yes, I think that's right. Gloves could work. I think that it could be a very nice thing. But I think that the reason that people are, and that basically Ultimate suffers from some of the same problems that a lot of other contact sports suffer from, which is that if you want to actually play well, you have to get up in people's faces, and if you want to get up in people's faces, then you're going to be risking getting whatever they got coming out of their mouths. And I think that throwing the frisbee back and forth in the park makes me feel uncomfortable with someone else, but I'm also like not sure where I fall in the whole kicking a soccer ball with somebody I don't know sort of thing either at this point. And maybe if I had a better idea of how this stuff worked and how this disease was transferred from people, then and maybe that information is coming, then it would seem like a much easier thing for me. But for now, I just sort of would fold it into the same problems that almost every other sport has, and that's a bummer because from you I've learned the beauty of Ultimate, which is that it's basically like a sport like football that you can play with people, and that people are super welcoming to you even if you suck at throwing a frisbee. So it's nice.
It is nice, and so is this, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. This was lovely.
I enjoyed zooming in with you. I'm sorry to everyone who suffered through our video quality. I hope you enjoyed the audio quality and the content quality.
Yes,
I
please.
think we're going to do this again. That is a fairly certain prediction. Would you agree with that prediction, David?
Yes, I would take the over. I don't know. That's not how you do it. I'm in.
All right. Well, I think, in a time of great uncertainty about the present, we like to give some very uncertain predictions about the future, and so we will again soon. And our theme for next time will be, do you have a prediction? We don't have to hold to it.
Let's see. I want to do entertainment of some sort, but I'm happy to let you be more precise.
All right, we're going to do something on entertainment that is a 70% certain prediction, and it will be sometime in the next 7 days, maybe like a 60% prediction.
That
fair?
sounds lovely. Yes, absolutely.
All right, until then, David, we're
42% chance of this happening very soon, Carl. Let's do it.
All right. Zooming in is out. Bye,
All
David.
right. Bye.